we're all living in this prison of our past, but we don't have to. We can free ourselves from what has been that lens, and we can then adopt a new way of being, a new way of thinking, and a new way of achieving. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to one belief that you have the power within to create everything you seek. So if you are ready to step into a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with me. I'm your host, Rudi Riekstins, and this is the Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. I'm Rudi Riekstins, your host, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how your life is your teacher. I always look at everything that is happening in my immediate environment as an opportunity for me to either learn, to grow, to evolve. And so I look at the things that are happening, how I feel about them, how I've reacted or responded in the past, what could I do differently today? I then go deeper. What's the lesson? If I chose this experience, why would I want to experience the positive and or the negative of any one situation? All of this is supporting me in elevating my awareness to thinking outside the box, so to speak, to not be so personally, emotionally connected to what is happening, but instead to take the approach of the ever present student of what is this life experience. But in addition to that, I'm also looking through the lens of all of what it is that I'm experiencing as a microcosm of what is happening externally. Now, you've probably heard me say that. And today I want to share a story with you, something that I've recently been experiencing both in my business and in my personal life. And I'm going to do it through a story to start. And I then look at what is happening, the emotions that come up for me. And then my question that I often ask is, if I'm experiencing this, if this is what is being experienced inside of my business, where is this being represented in the greater world? And I think that as you hear today's episode, it is going to definitely support you in asking some deeper, more meaningful questions. And then potentially at the end of this episode, giving you a tool that can support you in stepping out of what has been the narrative that has essentially been controlling your life. I'm in high performance. I am in the business of helping people achieve their highest and their greatest potential. I am constantly holding up a mirror for you to see yourself through either myself, my stories, or what I share, the guests that I bring onto the show, so that it can lessen your time in the pain. And today's story is going to start with me last week. My daughter graduated elementary school, and we were invited at the very beginning of the day to join the entire graduating class, all the parents, all the teachers inside the school's auditorium. And one by one, we got to watch each child get up, shake hands with their teacher, shake hands with the principal, receive their graduation diploma from elementary school. We got to watch them parade through the entire school as all the kids were celebrating them as now the graduates of the school. We had beautiful speeches. There were songs that had been performed, but there was a specific moment that brought me to absolute tears. And the level of emotion that I experienced in that room wasn't necessarily because of what was just happening on the surface inside of that auditorium. I was watching, along with all the parents, a slide projection show that had been prepared. And every single child was to bring a toddler photograph of them digitally to school. And they then created this collage where they showed every single child's toddler photo. And then all the students had an opportunity to guess, like, oh, who is that? And then they showed the present photograph of the graduating child taken at school days before. And this was where my emotion really took a turn. And I was obviously emotional because I'll never forget my little girl walking into school for the very first time. Aniston and I were like, this is so wrong. Her backpack is hanging past her knees. Like, how on earth is she supposed to go to school? She's so tiny and she's just our little baby, and we didn't want to let her go. And now seeing her so confidently, courageously walking across that stage, shaking hands with the principal, just so grown up. And so, yes, there was a semblance of just pride and joy that was flowing to me. But what I could not help realize was that I was sitting in a room with all these children, and we were seeing the literal effects of life played out on that projection screen in real time. And what I mean is that there were these kids as toddlers who had these beautiful, just bubbly, magnetic, eager, and excited eyes, big smiles, big hearts, just the promise of the entire world is your oyster. And then we were seeing photographs of these kids taken 6, 7, 8, 10 years after. And there was a very different look on so many of these children's faces. I was sitting in that room and I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders, as it is so prevalent in the work that I do, that so many people are showing up in their adult life today, having dreams, goals, desires to do something, to be something, ultimately to achieve something. Man, the emotion even comes up for me as I share this in this episode today. So many of the people that I work with today, and I want to put that at every single person that I connect with on a day-to-day basis, starts off by telling me that their life is pretty good. And that when we go back to their childhood to look at what were some of the pains, some of the triggers, some of the traumas, where the programming was formulated, they say to me, man, I had a really good childhood. I didn't really have anything that was wrong. And the more we build trust, the more we dive deeper into the work, majority of the people that work with me say, Rudi, I've never told a single living soul this before. And then they end up telling me something that happened in their childhood. And not all of these stories are stories of assault or abuse or alcoholism or abandonment in being left alone out in the streets. But every single one of these stories are about a child perceiving something inside their home through a parent, through a relative, a sibling, close friend groups where they are abandoned, where there are these micro moments that have caused profound pain. So oftentimes it is inflicted through parents who are doing the best that they can, but inadvertently create tremendous levels of trauma for these children. Some of the people that I work with have experienced egregious acts of pain. And so often, as I've alluded to, have been caused by the people that are the closest to them. Sitting in that school, watching these children on that stage, parents taking photographs, people clapping, I could not help but feel the weight of, if more than 60% of the people that I work with in my adult business today, meaning the adults coming through my business, have suffered sexual assault as a child, and that being a reflection of what is happening out in the larger world, then I sat there thinking, how many of these children are suffering at that level? I couldn't help but see the kids on stage with their smiles on their faces, some of them with heaviness in their eyes, and having that thought of, I wonder how many of these children right now are living in something that they don't know how to be able to communicate. They can't find words to express. They don't know how to assign emotion or value or meaning to a moment because they're in the throes of what is happening to them. And I kept thinking about the photographs that they were showing before of every single child, and how at one point we just had these dreams and we could do anything, we could be anything, and how over time our lives slowly erode our dreams because of our situation, circumstances, and experiences. And statistically speaking, 94% or 94 or 96%, I forget now, of children that are born actually test at a genius level. But by 11 years old, the majority of that is beaten out of us, and less than 11% of people by the age of 30 are testing at a genius. And if we are all born and we are not physically challenged and test at a genius level, then what is the difference between when we are born to when we are 11? And if that is through situation, through circumstance, through people telling you you're not good enough and you're not worthy and children should be seen and not heard, or your parents saying that they want to do something with you and then they don't, and you interpret that at a young age as you're not good enough or you're not worthy, or if somebody literally, physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually assaults you, abuses you, treats you like you're not good enough and you're not worthy, and that emotion compounds with you over time, and then you do the best that you can and you bury the emotion and you pretend like it didn't happen, or you create a facade where you build a situation, a life, a reaction, a response where you no longer allow yourself to feel that way. And then you get older and life gets a little bit easier and you move away and you get a job and you start a family of your own. And then you think that that is no longer impacting you. The work that I do is to take people all the way back to the very beginning, not so we can dive into the emotions, not so we can viscerally re-experience everything, but that we can have awareness to where does it start and how is this creating an impact in your life today. Because 100% of the people that I work with, when I ask them what is not working in their life right now, the very emotions that they are experiencing in their present day, to be specific, feelings they have about their boss, their job, their company, their employees, their bank account, their relationship, their children, their time, their freedom, the very way they describe how they are feeling right now is also the same terminology, the same emotional state, the same way of being and reacting than way they did when they were children, in their home, in their environments. And so for me, sitting in this school's auditorium, watching these beautiful children get up and they are in the beginnings of what their life is going to be, the heaviness that I felt was that so many of these children were in environments, knowingly or unknowingly to us, that was really hard and difficult for them to process and or to understand. And that they were going to grow up and they were going to take those pains, those triggers, those traumas, and they're going to react and respond the way they did as a child in their adult life. And it is going to show up in their job. It is going to show up in their marriage. It's going to show up as them as a parent. And very few people, very few people give themselves the gift of doing the inner work. I've shared a podcast in a different context, and I'm going to repeat a story here in the event that you haven't heard the episode. But I had a company call me and say to me that they had a vice president of revenue and they wanted to terminate this individual because they were erratic, they were irrational, they would get angry, they would scream and shout and cuss and threaten people. And so they said to me, we need you to work with this person or we're going to get rid of them. And I had said to the leader who had called me, without meeting the individual, after asking a few clarifying questions about their behavior and the circumstances that drove the behavior, I said, look, if we went back to this person's past, I'm going to tell you now that there was a level of abuse. They had to fight, defend, protect, and that there was probably a relationship with maybe a father or a strong dominant figure in their life that was overbearing, overwhelming, and they felt like they had to fight and defend. And that behavior is showing up in their work life. And so I get on a call, work with this individual, and it comes out absolutely physically, emotionally, mentally abusive father. And they got to a point in their life where they realized they had to, in a heightened state of stress, they had to fight. Now, everybody in a heightened state of stress either runs, they hide, or they fight. You have one dominant way of reacting. Then you have a secondary way where you obviously would respond depending on the scene, the situation. And then we've got the tertiary. But we react and respond in stress in an automatic default pattern based on how we reacted to similar stresses in our childhood. This particular gentleman, in heightened states of stress, when he felt like he was being attacked, the numbers were being attacked, his job was being attacked, how he was working, felt like a personal attack. And so if he was sitting in a meeting in a boardroom and his peers were asking him about the weekly report or where they were in relation to the year-to-date target goals, he would take that as a personal attack, which would trigger the emotional memory of how he had to defend as a child against his father. And so what would he do? He would become physically abusive. He would slam his hands on the desk. He would scream. He would shout. He would become very abrasive. And it wasn't that he, in fact, is that way. It's that his body, his brain was literally responding to heightened states of stress exactly the same as he did as a child. I share this with you because you are reacting and responding to 95% of what is happening in your life every single day based on some of the triggers from your past. So would it behoove you to look at how you are acting, reacting, and responding to moments in your life? If you were to write out on a piece of paper, how do you feel about your life, your bank account, your situations, your job, your freedom, your flexibility? How do people treat you? If you see a common theme, and that theme is that you're not supported, you're not encouraged, you're not respected, you don't have enough time, people don't really care about you, And you then look back at your childhood. How did you feel about your childhood? How were your parents? How did they treat you? What were the heightened moments that came up for you that really defined some of the emotional states of your life? You would see that there is a direct correlation in the same way that you felt as a child is how that you're showing up in your adult life today. And what few people know is that the way that we created the framework for what our life looks like as a child is still showing up in our adult life because we're still using the same lens to view all the information. And if we're looking for very specific information, the brain's designed in a way to only show us information that reinforces and reflects that back to us. So essentially, how the program was formulated is literally how we're going to view the world in the future. If I told you that you were going to walk into a room and I preempted you of what you're going to experience, what you would be looking for, your brain's only going to focus in on the information that I've already given you to look for, to reinforce. So that would very much be your experience. And then that's what you would find. And then you would be validated that you knew what you were going to expect and you got what you were expecting. Your life is exactly the same way. And if you are wanting to change an area of your life, you need to change the lens with which you view your life. What you focus on is what you're going to experience. And if you're focusing in on acting, thinking, feeling, responding the same way that you did as a child, then you're going to, whether that is conscious or unconscious, you're going to repeat the pattern of the past. Everything that you're doing, everything that you're thinking, and everything that you're feeling is going to be filtered through that same lens. I have a program called the Elevated Leadership Program. It is a 4-month container where I take people by the hand, a very small cohort, 10 to 12 people at a time, and I take you through a leadership journey. Now, it is a leadership journey, but it is really about self-leadership. How do you as the individual lead yourself? And the very first place that we start is, what is it that you're experiencing right now? How would you summarize what your life looks like and feels like? And then where is this a duplicate carbon copy, and we prove it to you, of how you felt about your life as a child? We systematically work back from where you are to where the program started so that you can have awareness to how you've been living your life and how it has literally been a repetition of the past over and over. Carbon copy just keeps printing it, moving it forward. And that's why your life looks and feels and stays the same. And when people see the patterns of how they feel now is the same as the way that they felt throughout their life, all of a sudden they wake up very different. They wake up very, very empowered. They start to realize, well, that's not really the lens. That's not really how I should be showing up. I have had probably close to, at this point of the year now, 100 of my breakthrough calls, at least. And that means that I have had 2 to 3 hours with individuals that have booked a breakthrough call with me, where we literally go through your entire journey of your life. And most of these are high performing individuals who have achieved success. They run companies, they're very successful. And if we were to look at them from the outside looking in, we would say, wow, they have achieved tremendous levels of success. And then when we look at the way that they feel about themselves, they would not describe their lives as successful. And when we talk about the pain that they're living in and look at where that actual pain started, we can see how every single person, regardless of the environment that we grew up in, regardless of what we have or have not achieved in our lives today, we're all living in this prison of our past. But we don't have to. We can free ourselves from what has been that lens. And we can then adopt a new way of being, a new way of thinking, and a new way of achieving. So often that people graduate from the Elevated Leadership Training Program, they get promoted. More than 80% of the people that have gone through my program have elevated in the business that they're in, whether it's their own company in growth of revenue or expansion, or if they're working inside of an organization, promotion within the companies. Why? Because all of a sudden they're not showing up the way that they were. They start to show up differently. They have a different level of leadership. They have a different level of how to communicate. They have a different way, tools, different way of utilizing tools to process stress in real time. And so they don't react and respond, and they become very powerful and magnetic leaders. And so right now, my question to you is twofold. What is the lens that you are using to view the world? How have you been feeling about what has been going on in your life? And can you today sit down and just spend some time reflecting in how does this actually show up in your past? And how often are you thinking and feeling about the things that have happened in your past, consciously or unconsciously? And are you ready to create a change in this today? Because if you are, I'm going to invite you to look at the Elevated Leadership Training Program. If this is something that you're curious about, something that you want to learn a little more about, I'm going to drop a link to book a time on my calendar where you and I can get on a call and I can walk you through what does it look like, what all is covered inside this program, and are you in fact ready for that level of growth and that level of change. The Elevated Leadership Training Program is for somebody who is tired of living life feeling like they're a victim to situation and circumstance. They know that they are called and meant for more. They want to have a new set of tools in their spiritual toolbox to be able to amplify the life that they're living. They are ready to step into that knowing, and they want more than just money, time, and freedom. They want to now turn around and start creating profound impact in the people that are the closest to them. Maybe that's in their business, in their family, or it's in the collective larger world. I just want to remind you that every single person that I've ever met, everyone I've ever come into contact with, I say the same thing. You were meant to change the world. And if you right now are not creating profound impact in the lives of the people closest to you and all around you, then there is more for you. Because I do believe that we came here to do something really big, something really bold, something really profound. And in these calls that I have, I so often ask people, what is your greatest dream? And then they tell me what they want to have, what they want to be, what they want to do. And I go, no, deeper than that. What's that? And inevitably, everyone has this big, grandiose vision. And that if they lived that vision, it would literally change the world. This is an invitation for you to step into the knowing that you came here to change the world. But you have to change the lens that you've been viewing the world in order for you to step into the power to become the world changer. And so I invite you to book a call if this is something that you're interested in and learn a little bit more about the Elevated Leadership Program. We're kicking one off right now at the end of July. So time is of the essence. If you're hearing this episode in June and you're interested, I'd love to talk to you and see if we can support you in achieving your highest and your greatest potential. And if it's not, then there's still value in this episode for you today. I want you to write out, what have you been feeling? And then look back at where did the program start? And if you continue to look for that information, you're going to continue to find it. But if you want to change your life, you've got to change the narrative. I love you so much, and I look forward to catching you in the next episode of the Empowered Life Podcast. Until then, bye. If this episode gave you clarity, peace, or a perspective shift, hold on to that. And here is how you lock it in. Subscribe so that you keep building momentum week after week. And if you're the kind of person that believes a good message should travel, please leave a review. Reviews aren't just ratings. They're signals that help this reach the people who are ready for it. And then share this episode with somebody you love, someone you lead, or somebody that you were rooting for. Links are in the show notes so that you can connect with me online and on Instagram. Now go out there and take one beautiful, bold, and aligned step and make it count. I'm going to catch you on the next episode of the Empowered Life Podcast.